You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. We got the whole crew back for this episode, which is episode 217. My name is Clark from 5cardguys.com and 5cardguys on Instagram. Co-hosting with me as usual is Hyung of Integrity Sports Cards and John, who is Trade You at Recess, both on IG as well. All right, off the top, the big sale this past week, of course, was the Michael Jordan 1-of-1 autograph Logoman card that sold on Goldin Auctions for $2.93 million. So yeah, big amount. So I want to ask you guys what you thought of that sale. And just to give you some context before you answer, the only other Logoman autograph card, to my knowledge at least, that sold for more than this MJ card, you probably know already, is the Luka Doncic National Treasures Logoman RPA. Most recently sold for $3.1 million in November of 2022. I believe Shine was the one that bought it back. So that's that one for $3.1 million. And there was also a $1.8 million sale back in September of 2020, which was the 2013 National Treasures RPA of Giannis Antetokounmpo, also a 1-of-1. So what do you guys think of this $2.93 million sale of the MJ Logoman?
Man, I don't know. Is this the only? I don't know much about the Logoman. I just seen a picture of it, and it looks like 2003 Upper Deck, like the Ultimate Collection. That's where it's from. But then I seen another Logoman. A Jordan Logoman. That's a different design. So I don't know what's like. Maybe our audience knows better, but is this something that's different than the other Logoman? Or is this more of a, I guess, more rare? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think it's like a Logoman from, it's not even guaranteed that it's from his Bulls playing days, which is what people would have wanted. Like it could be from his Wizards.
Right. I mean, it's cool. It's
uniform.
an on-card auto, and it's probably one of the earlier known ones. But then this might be a hot take, but like that's what worries me is how artificial are these values? Is this a plan for them to establish more of a solid marketplace? You know what I mean? So if you have the ability to control the market, for instance, if you're Fanatics and you're like, okay, let's dump in $30 million into the cards that we think should be the grail and set the standard as the market. Right? So it's like, is there that much demand between other parties, or is it more manipulated? And I don't want to say manipulated because, you start getting in trouble there. But like, that's what I'm curiously concerned about. Why is this now all of a sudden a thing? Is it because the market demands it? Or is it because, like we're like, okay, every big card. So if it's a first Bowman Chrome Superfractor, are all these values basically pretty much artificial, and kind of say, okay, these are the benchmarks now moving forward. Right?
Good question.
Yeah.
Not to be a Debbie Downer. I mean, it's a beautiful card.
When you get into this sort of unregulated sports card space, into rare, 6-figure, 7-figure sports cards, like, is there room for manipulation? Absolutely. So it's not, I don't think it's out of the question to maybe question some of that stuff. Because I mean, like, like what was the other card a couple of weeks ago that sold for $9? The MJ, the Star 84 Star. Like, right. I mean, it was in that person's best interest to publicize the private sale, because that sets the market for his card, right? Like if he bought it, he clearly paid the most anyone would have ever paid for that card. And if it stayed private and no one knew about it, and the next one that actually sold on Goldin ends up selling for 200,000, like the guy screws himself, right? But if he publicizes it, then it kind of sets the standard. Like, this is the cost of a Jordan 9. Like, everyone knows about the card. This is now the price of that card, right? So, you know, that's not manipulation, but that was out of his best interest to kind of keep his money safe. And, you know, like when you're talking big cards, there is a chance of that. I'm hoping not, but anyways, we'll get off the conspiracy talk. The 2.9 million, you know, like when I saw this card, first of all, it's aesthetically pleasing. Like in terms of like a Jordan, I don't know what the Logoman you're talking about, Hyung, but this one looks fantastic. I think from what I understand, that particular set, it's Upper Deck, right? That particular set is pretty well known. I wouldn't call it iconic because it's rare, but I think it's pretty well known, like the design. I know that there was a Kobe one that was really sought after that might have been, I don't know if it was ever on a public sale, but I've seen that card before, like images. So when I saw the card and we were talking about it, I don't know if we mentioned on the show, but we had to assume this was going to be the biggest Jordan sale. So 2.9, I don't know if it's justified. I feel like it is, to be honest, because there's so many Jordan collectors are so starved for like an ultra rare, super premium Jordan card, right? Like LeBron has Topps Chrome, but if you want to go ultra rare, you got the exquisite patch, right? The rookie patch. Like Jordan has the, he's got his Fleer, he's got the Star, but outside of that, there's no like exquisite auto patch exclusive anything for Jordan, right? There's some autos out there, but I think big, huge Jordan collectors, they want something big, like an exquisite patch rookie, which doesn't exist for him, right? So I think this is literally the next best thing. And when I saw the card, I had to assume this is the best Michael Jordan card in existence. So the sale of it should correspond appropriately, right? So 2.9, I think it makes sense, to be honest.
Wow. Yeah, I could see the argument for it. It's still a lot of money. I was looking for a Logoman autograph. I don't think I found another one while you were talking, but like I found this one, which is on my daily auctions, but it's not autographed. It is Logoman though. And from the 2004-05 Upper Deck SP game used.
Check 2002-2003 Upper Deck. NBA Logomania patches. So I'm wondering if this was even before, because it's 02-03 as opposed to 2003. So I don't know.
I feel like I know what you're talking about, Hyung. But I think the other one you're talking about maybe isn't one of one. They could be like at a 3 or something like that.
No, it's listed. Yeah, it's listed as a 1 of 1. Here, I'll see if I could. There it is.
Oh, Logomania?
Yeah.
I see it, yeah.
Like, I don't know enough to say, okay, one's better than the other. Obviously, the one that sold for 2.9 looks better. But that's an on-card 1 of 1, Logoman, and that's from 2002-2003.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not a big Jordan collector, so I wouldn't know. Maybe it's a simple answer. But yeah, I think the other card is the one to get, to be honest.
Definitely the other card, the one that sold for 2.9, is better looking, right? I think we all agree on that. But yeah, you're right. This is earlier. It's a 1 of 1. It's a Logoman, and it's autographed. If any of our listeners can just clear this up for us, why the heck that the other one sold for 2.93, unless it's just because it's more appealing visually than
or it's the exquisite collection, the one that everybody has been chasing, and it's kind of been
the brand of that card.
Yeah,
right,
I think it's kind of like the Bowman Chrome versus the whatever, you know.
That makes sense.
An insert
Fleer Platinum or something.
Out of all brands,
I don't know, it just came to mind.
Oh man. Yeah, you know what? That makes sense to me, right? So why that $2.9 million sale for that card would have cost so much and would have been more revered as the card to get. But yeah, a lot of money. So anyway, what I wanted to do to close off this off the top segment is to compare it with what else you can get in this world with that kind of money, okay? And a quick would you rather segment, all right? So I did a little bit of research before the show. Would you rather have that MJ Logoman 1/1 card that just sold on Goldin Auctions, or would you want a Lamborghini Countach that is valued at almost $3 million? So, someone gave you $3 million bucks. You got to choose one right now. You got to spend it.
Oh, that's an easy one for me. I would go with the MJ.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 100%.
The Lamborghini?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. It's a sweep. Surprisingly, it's a sweep. We go for the sports card over the sports car in this case. All right. Second, would you rather have the MJ Logoman or a beautiful 4-bedroom, 6-bathroom detached house in a nice suburban area of Toronto near Leslie and Steele's?
Oh, that's Leslie and Steele's is overrated. I'd rather have the MJ. You're overpaying for real estate in Toronto, so
it cost $2.9 million, sold for $2.9 million, or listed for $2.9 million.
Yeah, I'd rather go elsewhere. You mentioned Toronto. I love Toronto. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I don't think the real estate play in Toronto is the right play. So, as crazy as this sounds, I'd rather have the MJ and then own different real estate at 2.9. Just my
all right,
my opinion.
I have to go with the house at the cost of my marriage. It's you gotta pick the house.
I'm kind of with John. I think I got to go with the house too, but I understand fully Hyung's reasoning as well. All right, last one. The MJ Logoman or a 2-week stay, maybe a 2.5-week stay with 50 of your friends on Richard Branson's private island in the British Virgin Islands. The best all-inclusive vacation you could probably imagine.
Wait, how long is it for?
Truthfully,
2 to 2.5 weeks. Yeah.
Jeez.
Truthfully, I don't have 50 friends that I like, so I'm going with the MJ.
Wow, I did not expect a MJ sweep from Hyung, but
Yeah. I'm also picking MJ. I'm not spending no $3 million on a bunch of friends.
I like my friends, but not that much, right?
I like you guys, but not that much.
You selfish bastards. All right. I'm actually going with the MJ as well. I don't know what that says about us, but it's a temporary thing, a vacation. So I'd rather have something that's more, permanent, I guess. All right, that was a fun way to end off this segment, and let's move on now to hobby headlines. All right, so gemrate.com recently posted that in the month of May, a record number of cards were submitted to the top 4 graders. That's PSA, CGC, SGC, and BGS in that order, which added up to 1.78 million cards submitted. So the breakdown, if you're curious, is there are 1.36 million cards submitted to PSA, so definitely the bulk, not surprisingly. Next is CGC, 184,000. Then SGC, 174,000, and then coming in the rear, of course, BGS with 59,000. Now, if you read the comments on that GemRate post, you would see some common themes of what collectors are thinking about, and they range from the optimists thinking that the hobby is alive with so many cards being graded, to the more pessimistic view, or I'm sure they would call themselves realists, that we are entering or already in the Junk Slab era. And most of these cards, a lot of people are saying this, are probably Wemby base cards, right? So, let's start there. Where do you guys stand on this based on this information?
Well, the last statement, Junk Slab 2.0, I don't think we can enter that because the stipulations and variables are very different from Junk Slab 1.0. There weren't marketplaces that you could liquidate. There weren't, proper value in terms of communication. There weren't all these things that are in play today with a lot more information available. So I think that, one, it's not necessary. Is there a lot of people wasting money on cards to grade that aren't worth it? Absolutely. But I don't think you could judge that based on the whole macroeconomics of sports cards. It's like, you got to trust that Fanatics is not dumb enough to put themselves in this position to just say, okay, we're going to go into a next Junk Slab 2.0. Like, I think these guys are a lot smarter than us hobbyists. They have a lot more resources than us hobbyists. So it's a limited viewpoint when we're looking at it from a hobby standpoint. So I'm going to say it makes sense. All those graded cards, they're doing a good job marketing. They're doing, like, SGC's doing great jobs with promos, for instance. I see people, once they rip, they're sending to SGC because SGC has great promos where it's worth it. There could be the thing of, them using SGC as qualifiers because there's no upcharge. So if they're sending it and it's $10 a card or $12 a card and they get a 10 back, maybe those are the ones that, they're sending to PSA to try to get a PSA 10, and, who knows? But I think people, as the marketplace grows, people get smarter and more creative with things. And this is the evolution of kind of where we're going. It's just, every day is there's a new opportunity for someone. They see it differently. And, you could take that all the way to the corporate level where they actually do stuff in terms of businesses, right? So, yeah, that's kind of my viewpoint on that.
Yeah, good point about the more pessimistic view. It's definitely, the environment has changed since everyone just was submitting anything that they had. Like, we were part of that Junk Slab era 1.0, right? But yes, things have certainly changed. What do you think, John?
I'm kind of with Hyung. I don't necessarily see it as Junk Slab 1.0 and 2.0. I feel like we're coming out of the Junk Slab era, because the true Junk Slab era, like you said, it was 2 years ago during COVID, where you could submit anything. And even like PSA 8s were worth money. PSA 9s were definitely worth money. They were like 2-3x raw. It's not like these days, right? Like, there's only so many complaints that you see where people are like, would you rather have raw or would you rather have PSA 9? Because they pretty much go for the same price. So we're in an era, no question. I mean, if you're looking at 1.78 million cards within 1 month, there's no questions there's a lot of slabs out there. But I don't know if you can really say that this is like a junk slab. Inevitably, there will be junk slabs, right? There are 20,000 Jordan Loves that get submitted because he's a hot prospect, and then 2 years later he's trash, right? And then there's 20,000 junk. It's inevitable that's going to happen in this day and age. But everybody's a lot more savvy. Like people learned how to look at cards. A lot of local card shops, shout out Mint Ink in Toronto, like they look at the cards for you and make sure that this is this is a good chance at a 10. Let's go submit it. So a lot of the submissions are a lot more. They're smarter. Like, everyone's trying to aim for like a Mint 10. So we're in a different era. I wouldn't really classify it as Junk Slab. I think we kind of are coming out of the Junk Slab era. But when I look at the headline, I mean, for me, outside of the Junk Slab conversation, the fact that PSA has 1.36 million of the 1.78, the dominance and growing dominance, that's insane. That's pretty impressive. The fact that these card companies are, especially PSA, is able to process that many cards within 1 month is really impressive. And then, poor BGS at 59K. Like, I mean, you're sort of reaping what you sow, man. I mean, like, they deserve a lot of criticism because even with, they got like a new CEO, and that was like almost a year ago now, and not much has really, you haven't really seen any big efforts from them. Like, I don't know where they're at. So they're in a sad state, no question.
Yeah, I'll save my criticism for BGS for the next segment, and you'll understand what I mean when I tell you what the next segment is. But But yeah, the sheer number that PSA is doing, like you said, to your point, John, it's incredible. I take this as a more of a bullish sign personally to see all this activity, especially in the grading. I know it's a love-hate relationship with a lot of collectors, but grading, essentially, when I see these numbers, grading is here to stay in the hobby. You cannot get rid of it. As much as you want it to disappear, it's not going to. It's just a huge money maker. It's just a huge part of the industry now. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. But I think we need to work with the fact that it's here to stay, right? Another comment I read was CGC. It's like, LOL, who's using CGC? And he's the second place. I think people underestimate the TCG collectors.
Yeah,
I think that's a huge part of it, right? And even for PSA, a ton of TCG collectors, I'm sure, are submitting to PSA as well. Right. So that's probably giving them a nice boost. So yeah, don't sleep on TCG, guys. If you're, if you're thinking of where these grading numbers are coming from. Another interesting comment someone asked was, how much do you think of the number of PSA submissions are crack and resubmits from other graders? You think it's a significant amount? Or?
I don't think it's significant, but I will say I see a lot more people doing it, like discussing it, a lot more than what it used to be. So yeah, definitely. Like I said, even SGC, I would do that play if I had a really expensive card and I didn't know what I was going to get. It would cost me $12, let's just say, in that set. Instead of getting upcharged with PSA, you kind of use it as a qualifier for $12, and then if it's a 10, you could crack it and resubmit. Or you do that with BGS. A lot of people look at the surface on BGS if it's a Gem Mint 9.5 and it has a little rough surface. The controversial subject, Kurt's Card Care. Right, that's what people are thinking, but that's exactly what's happening. Let's not, beat around the bush like it's not happening. I see it all over, social media. So, yeah,
crack and submit, I would assume is like a tiny percentage, and that's not a knock. That's not to say, people aren't, like, clearly a lot of people are doing it, but you have to, like, it's not going to be enough to make a dent in the 1.78 million. And, if we're being honest, even between the three of us, the strategy to crack and submit, like, number one, if it's like if it's a card that's worth under $300 in a PSA 10, it's probably not even worth the effort, right? Let's say we get a slab BGS for $80. Would you consider cracking and submitting it because a PSA 10 is worth 180 or two? Not really worth it. And then once you get into like the bigger cards, like for example, Sidney Crosby, that's been on my mind, Sidney Crosby Future Watch Auto, like a BGS 9.5 goes for 5-6K and a PSA 10 is 10K, right? Like that's a good candidate. But now you're talking about PSA's grading fees, right? It's going to be $500, $600, $700, upcharge of $1,000. Like, that's a pretty big risk for somebody that doesn't normally play in the 4-figure space, right? To all of a sudden spend $850 on one card in grading to take that chance to make it a PSA 10. Like, not a lot of people are doing that. That's why you still see $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 cards in BGS slabs.
And PSA ain't giving those out. They're not
just giving it out. Exactly.
Like,
it's a pretty big risk to take.
Yeah.
Unless you're money bags and you're fully accepting and willing to take a loss on $800 if it's, if it comes out that way, right? So there aren't a lot of people. It's around because you see it on social media, but I don't think the strategy is as bulletproof. It's tough. It may seem like an easy strategy, but if you actually own the card, a lot of times you sit there, you go, I don't think it's worth it to go through that effort and maybe pay all that money and maybe not get it. So
yeah, no, that's true. And it goes back to your point about saying collectors are more savvy now,
right?
You know what I mean? So I don't think there's much of it, as much of it going on as we think. And the comment that I read, he says, I don't know if it's in jest, but he says, 30% of those are crack and resubmits. It's definitely not that high.
That's a high amount.
Right.
Single digit percentage. I'm even thinking like 1% or something like
fraction.
that.
Yeah.
Right. But speaking of good candidates to crack, listeners of this podcast will know, I still got my Mike Trout Bowman Chrome BGS 9, so I might add to that number by one. That goes crack and resubmit.
I will say that there are opportunities. Like when I'm looking at eBay for some slabs, I'm like, this is a great deal right here. I would probably crack and submit this. Like, and there is a play though. There's a small window of opportunity. I think a lot of people know about it and they try it. They like that gamble aspect because the reward is really high. But, I've seen people do stuff where, they're cracking BGS 9.5s and they're getting PSA 8s. And that's the reality of it. You gotta remember, it's like what somebody graded back in 10 years ago, and you're gonna use that same standard right now, especially on more strict cards. It's Russian roulette, man. I'm telling you. Modern
Always
cards,
risk.
It's okay. Yeah, modern cards, but nobody's submitting to BGS anyways, so.
59,000. Okay, there was 59,000 cards. Yeah. I'm more curious about like what June numbers are going to be like. See what the short term trends are. But there's definitely still play in that game of crack and resubmit. Our hobby friend DC Daryl Chan, he's big into that. I feel like last time he was on the show, he's like, "Oh, this is my crack and resubmit pile." I'm like, "Okay, you got a pile of cards that you're doing this to."
He's contributing to the fraction of percentage.
Yeah. Anything else from these numbers that kind of jump out at you in terms of the main numbers?
I think part of it too is they're more strategic with releases as well. So it's you're seeing a lot more hype over releases. They're getting new people in through that type of marketing. Like you said, it's the TCG stuff is booming as well. So you have a lot more people, and it's a chain reaction. The more they market and largen their audience, the more people that come into the game, and all they have to do is do a promo, on new releases and constantly, and you'll have people submitting because there's a marketplace for the short-term flip right away. Like, so there's incentive for people to submit because they could potentially make money. So as long as that demand exists, there's always going to be a marketplace, and there's people playing in different parts of that marketplace that will always create that demand. So,
100%.
Yeah.
John, any other thoughts?
No, I think I believe the hobby is alive, and I to be honest, I think when somebody says the hobby is alive, you can easily criticize that statement because I think they connect hobby is alive with when it was alive during the COVID era, right? They're thinking that's the standard I think a lot of people have in their mind. If it's alive, it should be kind of like the COVID era where everything's crazy and you submit anything and it's going to be like 10x and like the cards are going up 10, 20% per month. Like that is bias. That doesn't exist anymore. Like let's get that bubble out of our minds. And the fact that there are 1.78 million cards, if you go to card shows, like pretty solid, like really, really good attendances at a lot of big card shows. I mean, that has to signify that the hobby is alive. And I think people have to get it out of their minds of what the term hobby is alive means to them. I personally think it is. And it's not saying that we're going to sit here and make millions of dollars and it's crazy, amazing investment. We're not sitting here saying that, but is the hobby alive? Yeah, of course it's alive. Look at these numbers.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And maybe a more accurate thing is the hobby is growing, right? It's still growing despite what people think otherwise. That, it's definitely not dead, right? But I think acknowledging that the hobby is growing is pretty fair and accurate. The other thing I'll add before we go into the next segment is that, we talked about this in the previous pod where, with PSA having the eBay vault now and just making it easier to just click once and then having everything done for you, including the grading. Like as wide as the gap is between PSA submissions with all the other graders, like it would not surprise me one bit if that gap widens with PSA. Like PSA can essentially monopolize this grading game unless, the other grading companies do something about it. And the only closest competitor I see that might get closer to PSA, not significantly, is SGC, and they're both under the collector's umbrella anyways, right? SGC has the result. Collectors is winning 100% right now, but SGC is the only one right now I think that's providing decent promos. The recent one was what, $12 for any football or basketball card, I can't remember which sport, and then the Top Series 2, they're bringing back the $9 grading fee. People love those kind of promos, and why not? If it's only $9 or $12 for grading with SGC, that could increase your value if it's SGC 10, right? And this what I feel like CGC needs to do more, to tell you the truth. We can knock on BGS, but CGC is kind of like, it seems to me, I might be completely wrong, but it seems to me that they're just resting on the fact that TCG collectors know them best. And I think if they just continue to slack off, PSA is going to get more and more of that market share too. Sure. It looks like PSA is in a really good spot, and I don't know, more competition with the other graders would be nice, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Well, kind of teased it in this segment, but it's a good segue to our next segment. We haven't done this in a while, but we call it Dead Wrong. All right, so this is when, actually I thought about this when I was interviewing Brent, Deep Value Investor, last week. If you haven't heard that interview, I think if you're into investing sports cards, it was pretty insightful and practical, so please go listen to that episode. But we were talking off air about how some people are just hesitant and nervous to give their opinions about the hobby, and it's mostly because they're fearful of just being wrong in the future or not saying the right thing. And a lot of the things Brent's saying is like his opinion, and it's he's not afraid to state what his theory is and hypothesis is when it comes to investing. But yeah, people are just afraid to kind of share their opinion because they're fearful of getting something wrong. But we were saying how it's just kind of silly to think you can ever be 100% right about anything, right? And really the easier thing to do is to admit when you're wrong about something and just move on. Good life advice there too, and not just in the hobby. So in that vein, I'll start this segment by saying I was dead wrong about BGS. Okay. We already kind of talked about Beckett grading in the previous segment, but maybe I believed a little too hard that they would start turning things around, but they've been relatively quiet. It's John, you mentioned it. With the new CEO, you would think there'd be more activity, more announcements. They have some posts here and there, but in comparison to what PSA is doing, or even SGC, they're just so behind in the social media game. I don't know what to say beyond that. So yeah, I'm gonna admit I'm losing hope with BGS. At the same time, I'm still always actively looking for great cards in BGS slabs because I still think there's really good value. But man, I don't know.
The thing with the dead wrong segment too, it could be dead wrong right now, but it might be dead right in the future, right? So, I mean, unless if you're dead wrong on a player and he's like, I don't know,
retired,
where our boy Keston is, like, like he was. I'm not going to use him as dead wrong segment, but I would probably go Shohei with me.
I thought about that too. Yeah,
it bugs me though. I don't think I'm wrong. I still think it's crazy. I don't know when the buying opportunity is. I don't know how sustainable this is. It a bubble? I don't know. I thought it could have been, and my actions dictate that by not constantly purchasing. The cards that I think that are great buys for him. Because you're always scared of that. Well, he has Tommy John now. There's no way his prices could go up. And then he does something ridiculous, and it keeps on going up, right? But the question is, when does that bubble burst, right? When can that sustain itself? What if he hits 260 with 30 home runs? Does that still continue, or does it start trending downwards? Ever since we talked about it in 2022 or 21 when he went down and then he won MVP the following year, I've been dead wrong on Ohtani. So,
all right.
Yeah, I would say Ohtani.
That is
That's a good one. I thought about that, but yeah.
Man, I can't really think of a dead wrong. I would have to think that dead wrong is on our entire collection. like outside of Shohei Ohtani, I don't think there's anything anybody got dead right on.
Yeah. That's fair. Well, speaking of players, and this is, not as big as Ohtani, of course, but it's a good point you made, Hyung. I'm dead wrong right now about Bo Bichette. I bought in, I wish I spent that $1,000 on something else now other than the blue refractor first Bowman Chromato. I'm like, oh, this guy's Mr. Consistent. He's going to get his hits. And then I'm just, more than Bo Bichette, just the Blue Jays in general right now. It's kind of depressing watching the team and just them languishing near the bottom of the AL East. So yeah, that's a lesson for all you guys. Sometimes your hometown bias can really mess you up. But you never know. I still believe in Bo as a player, so I'll just hold.
One thing too about the dead wrong segment, because you got guys like Deep Value Investor, they look at it at a different cycle. They're looking at it in a different lens, whereas another person could look at it at a different lens, and it might be dead wrong to that one individual, but I think it's all dependent and subjective on how you view the investment. The perfect example would be that Bo Bichette. Most people would say, "Oh, you're dead wrong," but maybe you could have bought in a better price. But if you're buying in a 3-year or 5-year or 10-year cycle, and you see the data 10 years from now, and you realize, you know what, you might have done well, then you're not dead wrong, really. And I think that's the way Brent kind of looks at it more so than our typical hobby kind of is so fast paced because it's day trading, right? So we're looking at seasons as opposed to years, right? And I think people get caught in between, and then for me, I'm a victim of that too, like long-term strategy, but then you see short-term plays, and then you mingle the two, and you're like, I want to cash my long-term play out for a short-term play, right? And then that's when I think most people are stuck in between. And then that's the subjectiveness that I think is the battle within our hobby.
Yes, excellent point. And I'm glad you brought that up, because really this dead wrong segment is kind of a fun segment that we're just taking a lighthearted approach to. But yes, perspective is everything. And but I will say, I just thought about this right now. I guess right now, if you're looking at this time period, I was also dead wrong about Luka Doncic's Silver Prism. Man, I should have just held till last week when it went up to 2,000 again.
Oh, did it go up to 2,000? Holy cow.
Yes, it hit up to 2,000. It was ridiculous. And I sold it for like 12. Yeah. So,
yeah. That's a good one. You and I are both dead wrong about the Ant versus Luka segment.
That's true. This segment can last for a long time now. Oh yeah. if we really think about it.
I think the right play in the hobby is do exactly opposite of what you're gonna do.
Yeah, exactly.
what your gut is telling you, do the opposite.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sure you'll have more success that way. All right. Well, that was fun. Let's finish off this episode with our regular weekly segment we call Pick One. And if you're a first-time listener, this is when each of us, we choose 2 cards, and then we just debate which one we would rather invest in. All right, so Hyung, do you have one to start things off with?
Yeah, I actually, going back to baseball, 2 players that I think is worth discussing, because Aaron Judge really turned it around after a really slow start, but his prices also have been starting to creep up.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go actually Aaron Judge versus Mookie Betts here, because I think Mookie slowed down a bit, but Mookie's approaching 70 WAR, this season. He'll topple 70 WAR, and he'll be probably one of the highest active WAR leaders. And you got to remember, discussion of Mike Trout now, at his pace compared to where Mookie's going, I think there's an argument, and Brent probably could agree to this, that Mookie is still a buy. So I think there's a great buy versus Aaron Judge. So I'm going to go Would you guys rather go for the refractor Aaron Judge Bowman Chrome, so 2013 Bowman Chrome draft? It recently sold for just under $2,000, and this is a Min Gem 9.5
Refractor auto.
Auto 10 refractor auto versus a 2014 Bowman Chrome Mookie Betts auto, so non-refractor, but it's a BGS 1010, and it sold for $1,750. So a Min Gem refractor 9.5 of Aaron Judge versus a BGS 1010 base auto of 2014 Mookie Betts sold for $1,750. So $200 cheaper than the refractor auto.
This is I'll go first because it's pretty easy for me, and I don't know if it's because I again spoke with the value investor.
Oh,
no. Why'd you choose those two cards? I own both of them at one point.
I know. I wanted to see which because then I know your answer would be the whatever didn't scar you.
Yeah. Which is the correct answer for me is the Aaron Judge, right? But more than that is after speaking with Brent, yeah, I totally buy into the whole choosing scarcity over grade. I know they're both unnumbered, but you gotta think that the refractor of Aaron Judge is more rare than the base of Mookie Betts, and he used extreme example. I don't know if you saw the recent IG reel I put out on 5 card guys and Cars to the Moon, but the X-Fractor Black Label 1010 that Brent was talking about sold for $120,000 at its peak, and you could have gotten the gold and the blue plus cash on hand for the equivalent amount. And it's if you did that route, you're laughing. Although that gold and blue also went down, it's significantly worth more than the X-Fractor.
But here's a side question to that. What if you're on the side of the X-Fractor selling? You're selling the X-Fractor Black Label. You would have done really well on that. Right? Long term, maybe not.
Yeah. As a seller, yes. Yeah. But I guess, I feel like that also had to do with like the pandemic times,
Right.
Everything was at its peak. So as a buyer, I'm still sticking with just the more rare,
right?
Rather than
so player doesn't make
grade.
A difference. You're apples to apples at that point for players.
Yeah, I mean, if the price of the cards itself is similar,
right,
and the players, they're different kind of players, but they're both studs. Then yeah, there's a certain point I'm sure the player does matter, but I would be happy with an Aaron Judge or a Mookie Betts at the end of the day. So if that's kind of a wash, then I'm going with the more rare card in this case over the grade. So Aaron Judge.
Nice. What about you, Johnny?
I think for me, the right player is Mookie. The wrong card is the base auto, and the wrong grade is the BGS 1010. Like you're paying the extra for the BGS 1010. I want to pick Mookie because I'm not a huge Aaron Judge fan, but short term and long term, and Clark kind of touched on this, which is good. Short and long term. Long term, I think you have the scarcity, you have the like eye appeal, refractor, all of that stuff on the Aaron Judge side. I would, even short term, like I feel like we touched on this a little bit in past episodes. Bowman Chrome base autos, I think, are kind of on their way down. Like I think they're starting to kind of be playing in the base card space rather than rarity. I feel like the hype on them are slowly going to die. Mookie's a little different because I'm sure his base auto is a little bit more rare. But I feel like overall long term, it might be a dangerous card to get into, like Mookie base auto. So even short and long term, even though I think Mookie is the right player to pick, the Aaron Judge seems like the easier one for me. It's got the eye appeal, it's got the rarity, and Aaron Judge, to be honest, and he's leading the home run race, right? Again, that whole sort of like the chick stick the long ball concept. Like it still stands. And if Aaron Judge can be the king by the end of the year, his card values are going to stand. And I think Aaron Judge has done enough now. I've been a bit of a hater on Aaron Judge because I feel like he's one of those players that go up and down every year to year. Like one year he's like the best player in baseball, and another year he completely tanks. So I'm always weary of putting any money into him. But at this point, I think he's starting to pretty much establish himself as one of the big dogs and could come out as one of the, top 20 players of our era when all is said and done. So I think if his, even long-term wise, Aaron Judge's investment seems like it's becoming a lot more safe. So short-term, home run race, long-term, still pretty safe. And all of the above in terms of scarcity, I think Aaron Judge is the one.
Nice. Yeah, this one's tough because I do believe in all the points you guys said. I do think there's a play on BGS 10 just because that creates that scarcity. I know grading subjective, you go back into, but you're not going to change buyers' perspective on that. I think BGS 10 have shown that they hold value more than a PSA 10, so it'll be worth more than a PSA 10. And the min gem kind of kills it for me, but I think the refractor is the right play, like with the long-term logic that, okay, if I'm going to hold both of these cards for a while, I probably go the Aaron Judge. But if I'm probably more on a short-term timeline where I could liquidate, I don't mind the BGS, the extra grade, because I think the value is going to be there, given that Mookie Betts performs equally on par as Aaron Judge. But yeah, in the long term, I'm going Aaron Judge as well. But I think the base move isn't a bad move based on the price. I think it will fetch a premium one day if Mookie keeps doing what he's doing, because I think among active players, I don't think there's anybody ahead of him right now.
Yep. Good one. But it is an Aaron Judge sweep.
Nice.
All right. Johnny, you
Yeah,
got one?
I didn't see your off the top segment before thinking about 1v1, but mine is going to play off of the Michael Jordan Logoman.
I knew you were going to do that because that was mine, so I'm thinking
it?
about backup right now. Johnny is like notorious for stealing my pick one, so
to
go
be
ahead.
fair, I wrote in our chat, is anybody doing the MJ Logoman?
Oh, you did? I didn't even see it, honestly, but fair enough.
So if you follow, I can't remember which account it was from, but he follows some of the main Instagram accounts in sports cards. Somebody put up, and you kind of touched on this, somebody put up, would you rather the MJ sale at 2.9 versus the Luka sale at 3.1 or 3.3 or whatever it was, right? And I think the easy answer obviously is the MJ because,
yes,
it's MJ, long-term, short-term, everything. Luka was a sale that happened a little bit during the higher times of sports cards. So I think most people automatically assume that card today would be worth, I don't know, like 2 million. After this, maybe a little bit higher after this, who knows, after the NBA playoffs. But even pre-NBA playoffs, some people probably would have said like 1.5, 1.7 as low. So I think it's an easy answer. So rather than that, I'm going to go, would you rather the MJ Logoman 1/1 or the Luka 1/1 Logoman NT and the Kobe 1/1 Logoman from the same set as the MJ? So we're going Luka Logoman auto, Kobe Logoman auto, or the MJ Logoman auto, assuming pricing is kind of somewhat similar. Let's call it if it was the same.
I could go. I think it's easy for me. I think I would go the Luka Kobe. Yeah, I just think there's better value in it, and don't get me wrong, like that's I think both cards could do that one day when the time's right and to the right buyer, right? So if you were to say like, would you take Luka at a 50% discount, then I think that would have been fair. But now you're basically adding that Kobe to that, and I think that Kobe would do pretty well in auctions, I think, at the end of the day. So I'm gonna go Kobe Luka.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go Kobe Luka as well. That was my first gut, and I was trying to see if I could talk myself out of it and choose the MJ. But I feel like you know, you know, the MJ sale was high. I feel like someone overpaid, but I can understand why they would overpay just to get it. But I think at the end of the day, it could go down a little bit, and whereas the Kobe is gonna have a nice floor, and then Luka is the variable for me. Like if Luka continues to do what he does, I think there's a scenario where you could end up on the winning end by holding on to the two cards. So I'm going with the Luka Kobe in this case.
I could see, for myself, I could see the argument for both. Because the MJ, as we go further into the sports card space and more people enter and maybe exit or whatever ends up happening to the landscape, that MJ Logoman, first of all, I didn't even know existed, right? I'm sure many people didn't know it existed. It was probably in somebody's hands for the last however long it's been in their hands, right? But now that the fact that it's surfaced and people know what it is, I think there's a good chance, like this could be a card that is sort of like the holy grail of holy grails, like in the upper echelon of holy grail cards to collect, including Mickey Mantle, like a high grade Mickey Mantle 52, et cetera, et cetera. So as the industry grows, I think this is one of those cards that could easily go up as well. But with that being said, I think the Luka Kobe is probably going to be the popular answer, and I'm going to say it too. First of all, I'm a big fan of both players, so collector-wise, it's very easy to pick those two. But I think the Kobe Luka is the fun choice, because you get the collectability of like two really amazing players, and you get the volatility of Luka, right? Because a Luka could be worth $2 million today, it could be worth $5 million in the future. It could topple the Jordan card. Who knows, right? It shouldn't. Like that's MJ. But I mean, we're talking, we're talking rookie.
It's the hobby.
It is the hobby.
Hobby logic.
But it's also Luka's rookie Logoman auto, which makes a difference, right? So if Luka ends up going to win, I don't know, 2-3 championships and cements himself as one of the greatest all time, top 10 NBA, yada, yada, yada. Like we're talking a huge, huge card. So I think, and it's present day, you can still like cheer for him and you can kind of have fun with the hobby. So I think it's the more fun, little bit more risky, but I think for a lot of people, Luka is not really a risk anymore. So I think in a lot of investors' eyes, it could also have a lot more potential. So yeah, it's a sweep.
Another sweep. I like it though. That's a good one. All right. I was originally going to choose the MJ Logoman, that card, or 3 MJ stars that sold for 900,000. But that would have been a scenario. I guess we only found one, so that would have not even be a good. That's
actually a good one. That's a good question.
I chose some. Maybe we'll save it for the future. We'll see. But I went back to baseball. And it's kind of similar to Hyung's. It depends on the player, the grade, and the parallel, I guess. But I'm trying to make a point here. So 2011, Bryce Harper, first Bowman Chrome Auto. All right, a base Bowman Chrome Auto, BGS 9.5, True Gem, sold recently for $1,000 even. Okay, so Bryce Harper, 2011 first Bowman Chrome base auto, True Gem. True Gem, first Bowman Chrome Auto, gold, number 250, of Kyle Tucker.
Oh, shoot.
I kind of mentioned it. The disrespect that Kyle Tucker is getting year after year. I want to know which one you would go for. And that sold last month, May actually, for $975. So let's say $1,000 for a gold refractor first Bowman auto of Kyle Tucker.
And the other side is Bryce Harper base
2011 first Bowman Chrome Auto base auto, same grade.
Grade.
Damn.
For $1,000.
So, oh man. So I wouldn't say I love Kyle Tucker. I think he's such a great hitter, such great but he falls into that category. I think Austin Riley, Jordan Alvarez, a lot of these pure hitters that are putting unbelievable numbers, they don't get any love. But I do like the gold. Like to me, gold is the standard. So right then and there, I think that would, because it's base versus gold, I think the risk factor, I'm rolling the dice on the gold than Kyle Tucker. just because if it were like, let's just say a $10,000 gamble, I think it would be different with different players. But for me, I like Bryce Harper too, but I think he gets shadowed a lot. There's a lot more exciting players out there, so he's in that kind of like in between. Doesn't get love, but he kind of does. And if there's a player that should be ahead of him, it's Mookie Betts. So I think he's down on the priority list who's undershadowed. So I think Bryce Harper, there is a play in general, but gold is gold, especially in the Bowman Chrome world. I think that's a massive card. And if you believe in Kyle Tucker and his ability, he's 27 years old now. And, you know, next 4 years is going to be his kicker. If he could replicate and continue on his current success, I think there's definitely a play on Kyle Tucker. But it might be long term. You know, it's definitely not short term. And same with Bryce Harper. I think you're going to sit sideways with that Bowman Chrome until he hits 50 and wins another MVP. So I'm going to go with the gold Kyle Tucker.
Okay.
You know, the Brent Deep Value Investor answer is seemingly... you know, if we...
He's yelling at us right now. He's like, what are you talking about?
Like, this is easy.
But the gold is seemingly the right answer. And actually, as Hyung was talking, I was like, yeah, you know what? Like, I think that is the answer, Kyle Tucker. Like, it's gold. You know, Kyle Tucker's proven himself enough now that he is a solid MLB player with a chance to be a multi-year all-star, yada, yada, yada. Like, he looks like he's all the part. Just super, super, super underrated, perhaps. But if I really think about it, like if this was actually me buying the card right now, I'm not a big fan of either, to be honest, no disrespect, even to Bryce Harper. He's a favorite for many people, but not necessarily for me. So I wouldn't be happy with any of these cards in my collection. So I am getting rid of it as fast as I can. And if I'm doing that, the Bryce Harper is the much easier card to trade or sell or whatever I need to do with it for the time being. And I think Kyle Tucker, he is underrated, and I think he's just going to be one of these forgotten players unless he hits 50 bombs and overtakes Aaron Judge for the whole, like he's got to do something really spectacular to kind of get into the limelight, right? So otherwise it's just going to be this sort of like slow trajectory, you know, it's quasi maybe Hall of Fame career, slow all the way up, always underrated. So it's just too long of a play for me to care about at all. So I think Bryce Harper, Philly playoffs, whatever we want to call it, or that's good enough for me. So it's Bryce Harper, and you know, like it's base, it's ugly, but again, I'm coming from the standpoint of I just want to get rid of one of these cards immediately. So it's going to be Bryce Harper.
All right, understood. But for me, it's going to be Kyle Tucker, and for the same reason as Hyung, the gold is. You know, is too nice, and I think the level of disrespect for Kyle Tucker is incredible, and I'm gonna stick by my boy Kyle Tucker for as long as I can, but you never know. It could be one of the things I use for my future Dead Wrong segment. So that's you know, only time will tell. But yeah, I just wanted to make that point. Kyle Tucker, third in the league, or tied for second actually, with Gunnar Henderson in terms of the home run race. You know, Mr. Consistent. That's the guy I should have bought instead of the Bo Bichette blue refractor. I should have got the gold of Kyle Tucker. It would have been much more interesting to hold on to for this season at least. But all right, that's a wrap for this episode. Thanks as always to all our listeners and subscribers. We appreciate you guys, and we'll have a brand new episode for you on Friday. Talk to you then. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.